James Patrick Bulger was born in the town of Kirkby, England, on the 16th of March, 1990. The only child of his parents, Denise and Ralph Bulger, at that time, after their first child was born stillborn, James was the light of their lives and the miracle they had prayed for. He was happy and playful, but his curly blonde hair, big bright eyes, and cute smiling face would soon become infamous in a case that would shock the nation and put an end to an era of innocence. On the 12th of February 1993, Denise Bulger woke 2-year-old James up and got him dressed for the day ahead. Zipping up his coat to prepare for the cold winter's day outside, they were heading out to the nearby New Strand shopping centre in Bootle, Merseyside. James's father Ralph was helping Denise's brother put together furniture and didn't want James to be around the heavy wardrobe doors and the dangerous parts, so had told Denise to keep him safe with her that day. When Denise and James arrived to the shopping centre, she noted that there were large crowds of shoppers, and James had delighted in running rampant around the shops, so had taken hold of his hand. Their final stop would be at the A.R. Tim's butcher's shop at 3:40 p.m, which was located on the lower floor of the centre. Denise had briefly let go of James's hand so that she could take out her money to pay for her purchases. Meanwhile, just meters away, CCTV had captured 2 young boys lurking within the shopping centre. The boys were truanting from their local primary school, which they did often. They had already spent their morning shoplifting various items, including sweets, batteries, a troll doll, and a can of blue modelling paint. Later on, they could be seen casually observing younger children. It would later come to light that they had been selecting a target that day. Their plan was to abduct a child, lead him to the busy road alongside the shopping centre, and push him into oncoming traffic. When Denise had momentarily let go of her son's hand that day, in the mere 2 minutes that she had taken her eyes off of her toddler, the 2 boys had approached James, taken him by the hand, and led him out of the shopping centre. The moment was caught on CCTV at 3:42 p.m. This haunting image would be the final footage of the little boy alive. The 2 boys who had abducted James would later be revealed as Robert Thompson and John Venables, both just 10 years old. Thompson and Venables then took James to the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, around a quarter of a mile away from the New Strand shopping centre, where they dropped him on his head, causing injuries to his face. The boys laughed at the little boy and joked about pushing James into the canal. An eyewitness said that he had seen James by the canal with the 2 older boys, and that he was crying his eyes out, but this witness failed to intervene. Just one of many that day who had missed the opportunity to save James's life. The boys continued walking on for 2 more miles across Liverpool. During this time they were noticed by around 38 more people, but only 2 challenged the boys about the distressed toddler that they were lugging around. The boys, however, either claimed that James was their younger brother, or said that the little boy was lost and they were taking him to a police station. At one point, the boys tried to take James into a pet shop, but were kicked out by the owner. Eventually, the boys arrived in Walton. With Walton Lane Police Station just across the road, they hesitated, but soon enough, they proceeded to lead James up a steep bank to a railway line near the former Walton and Anfield railway station. It would be here that one of the boys threw the blue paint that they had shoplifted earlier into James's left eye. They then kicked him, stamped on him, and threw bricks and stones at him. They placed batteries into the little boy's mouth, and it is said that they also inserted some into his rectum. The boys picked up a 10-kilogram railway fish plate and dropped this on top of James. He sustained 10 skull fractures as a result of the bar striking his head. Pathologist Alan Williams later stated that James had suffered so many injuries, 42 in total, that none could be confirmed as the fatal blow. In a final brutal act, Thompson and Venables laid James's brutalised body across the railway tracks, weighting his head down with rubble and hoping that a train would hit him and his death would be ruled an accident. After they left the scene, James's body was cut in half by a train as it rode over him. When Denise had first noticed her son was missing, she ran from the shop. The biggest regret she ever had was turning left as she exited the store. If she had turned right, she would have seen James being led away, trustingly holding hands with the boys who were about to murder him. Denise took another left turn towards the Security Information Centre. They immediately put the disappearance out over the tannoy. Denise frantically urged them to shut all of the shopping centre doors in case he wandered out, but sadly, this wasn't possible. Denise ran frantic throughout the shops, asking if they had seen a little boy. One assistant reassured her, saying, "Don't worry, love, they have found him," telling Denise that he was on the second floor of the shopping centre. But when Denise raced upstairs, another assistant told her that James was in another shop 2 floors down. Denise ran back downstairs, but was told that they didn't have him either. One security guard even told Denise, "Don't worry, he'll be in Woolworths. We always find them in Woolies playing with the toys. We've never lost one yet." Nobody at that time seemed to grasp the severity of what was occurring. Sadly, the sightings had been false, and James was already out of the centre and down the street. At 4:22 p.m, 40 minutes after James went missing, the first calls came into police that there was a 2-year-old boy missing from Bootle Shopping Centre. After carrying out their own search of the shops with no success, the police suggested that it was time for Denise to go down to Marsh Lane Police Station to assist in making a statement and describing James's last known movements that day. But the thought of leaving the shopping centre without James was crushing. Denise was taken to the police station, where she was joined not long after by Ralph. At around midnight, James's parents were taken back to the Strand shopping centre and were told that there was some CCTV footage that they wanted them to look at. A camera outside of the butcher's shop had showed a very blurred image of a tiny boy running through the doors, seemingly being encouraged by 2 young boys. The next frame, timed at 3:42 p.m, became the most haunting of the case. The infamous grainy image of James holding hands with one of his killers. 240 seconds was all it had taken for James to leave his mother's side and be taken outside of the shopping centre. Seeing this CCTV footage provided a glimmer of hope to Denise. James wasn't a lost child, he had been taken. This footage had strangely reassured everyone, including the police. They went from fearing that James had wandered off alone to believing that the boys were merely somewhere playing with James and treating him like a younger brother. However, by late Saturday afternoon, James had still not been found, and Denise was beside herself with worry. By that afternoon, the phone rang. She was met with a sinister voice on the other end, stating repeatedly, "We've got your little boy." As Denise screamed down the phone, demanding to know who was behind the call, she realised it was a prank and put the phone down, bewildered that anyone could be so cruel. At around 3 p.m. on Sunday, Denise had been with PC Mandiwala when she got a call on her radio. Her instructions were to not only come back immediately, but to turn her radio off. As the 2 women arrived to the station, Denise was met at the entrance by 3 detectives. As she began to shout to them, asking if they had found James, one of the detectives knelt down beside her, grabbed her hand, and uttered the heartbreaking words, "I'm sorry." The next words were ones that Denise did not want to hear. "We've found him, and it's not good news." One of the officers on duty at the station that day later remarked, "I just heard an almighty screech, real bottom of the gut stuff like an animal. I burst into tears because you knew what that meant. You just knew her heart was broken." Ralph had still been out looking for James when the news had been broken to Denise. A family member was sent out to break the news to Ralph in person before he found out elsewhere. Ralph was told that his baby had been murdered, sitting in a random car park on Valentine's Day. James, who loved anything to do with trains, had been found dead on a railway track in Walton by a group of young boys. The nature of James's death was not disclosed to his family at the time, only that an accidental death had been ruled out. As news of the toddler's murder was confirmed across media outlets, the Strand shopping centre, the final place where James was sighted, was soon adorned with hundreds of bunches of flowers. The breakthrough that the police needed to locate the individuals responsible for the murder came when a woman, who upon seeing a slightly enhanced image of the two boys on national TV, recognised John Venables, and remembered seeing him skipping school with his friend, Robert Thompson, in the Bootle area that day. She contacted the police and the boys were arrested. Police officers were shocked upon discovering the ages of the boys who had so viciously murdered little James. One officer remembered John Venables being so small that his legs didn't touch the floor as he sat in the custody office after his arrest. Forensic testing on the boys' clothing soon confirmed that both boys had the same blue paint on their clothes as found on James's body. Both also had traces of blood on their shoes, which was quickly confirmed as having belonged to James Bulger. A pattern of bruising on James's right cheek also matched the pattern of the shoe worn by Robert Thompson. Both boys were questioned about their involvement in the abduction, torture, and murder of James, with both boys blaming the other for the crime. During questioning, Thompson remained stony silent. His coolness unnerved police. However, Venables had collapsed after his arrest and wept for days. Thompson was even said to have asked police whether James had been taken to the hospital to get him alive again. Police suspected that the boys had sexually assaulted James, as his shoes, socks, trousers and underpants had also been removed, and the pathologist's report, which was read out in court, found that James's foreskin had been forcibly pulled back. When Thompson and Venables were questioned about this aspect of the attack by detectives and a child psychiatrist, they were both reluctant to give details. The boys were charged with the murder of James Bulger on the 20th of February, 1993. Awaiting trial, they were held in secure units and were known in the media as Child A and Child B. The full trial opened at Sessions House in Preston on the 1st of November 1993. Up to 500 protesters gathered outside, shouting to kill them and hang them.
Let them go! 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 Let them go!
Were running up to the side of the transit van, hammering on the side with their fists. The boys I know didn't like that one bit.
The trial was conducted as an adult trial, with the accused in the dock away from their parents. Each boy sat in full view of the court on raised chairs so that they could see out of the dock designed for adults. They were accompanied by 2 social workers and guards. The boys denied the charges of murder, abduction, and attempted abduction. During the trial, it emerged that Thompson and Venables had attempted to lead away another 2-year-old boy, but had been prevented by the boy's mother. The home lives of each boy was mentioned during the trial, and was thought to be a leading factor in why the boys lacked empathy. The boys had both attended the same school and become close friends after being held back a year. Robert Thompson was the tough one. He was raised in a rough and brutal environment, in a home where he was subjected to regular beatings by his 5 older brothers and alcoholic mother. Robert's father would regularly beat his mother before he abandoned the family for good. Soon enough, the eldest Thompson brother was placed in Child Protective Services. Another sibling became a master thief, often taking Robert along with him on his travels. Another sibling was an arsonist and suspected of sexually abusing young children, whilst another would threaten his teachers with violence. The police and social workers knew the Thompson boys very well. Whenever a crime was committed, the Thompsons were checked. Robert's teachers described him as shy and quiet, yet manipulative of others. Sometimes he talked tough, trying to act the role of a Thompson, but he was not considered violent or aggressive. He was mostly a truant known to roam the streets of Walton at 1 a.m. His mother Anne sometimes hid his shoes to try and keep him home. John Venables was also the product of a broken home. He was the youngest of 3 children of Neil and Susan Venables, who divorced when John was just 3 years old, due to his mother's infidelity. Venable's siblings had special educational needs, and the family social worker had noted his jealousy of the attention they got. He would steal from local sweet shops, but his mother's attempts at getting him under control were futile. If she grounded him, he would run out of the front door, kicking it on his way out. Poor behaviour manifested itself in battles with neighbouring children. His favourite trick was a kick in the shins followed by a punch to the rib. If he didn't get his way, he would burst into tears before getting the family Rottweiler Blackie to bark at other terrified youngsters. Complaints to his mother were met with abuse from her too. The children were often left outside for hours after school when nobody was home. Meanwhile, Mrs. Venables was out gallivanting with a procession of men. She could often be found in the pub downing lager and vodka. One of John Venables' teachers said, "He was the strangest child I ever had in my class. He demanded attention all the time, and if he did not get it, he would throw the most outrageous tantrums. He would literally throw himself across the room, banging off the walls and furniture." Venables was thrown out of school in June of 1991 after trying to strangle another child with a ruler. The assault was so intense that it took 2 teachers to drag him off, and staff later told police that they were unsure of how far John would have gone. The trial went on for 17 days. Denise took the opportunity to remember her son, describing him as trusting and always willing to share. He was never grumpy, there was no tantrums, and he wasn't naughty. He was a cheeky little ray of sunshine, she stated. John Venables was said to have been so haunted by his toddler victim that he detected a baby smell on every item of clothing that he wore to the murder trial. On returning from court, Venables would immediately strip off his clothes, saying, "I can smell James like a baby smell." During the trial, Venables would often ask his parents, "Do you think baby James is there in the courtroom?" He was said to have been so haunted by guilt that he began to imagine a baby James growing inside him, as if he could make things right again by giving birth and new life to his victim. Finally, on the 24th of November 1993, the boys, now 11 years old, were found guilty of James Bulger's murder, after being branded cunning and wicked by the judge. The boys were ordered to be detained indefinitely in a secure children's unit. Both boys were reported to suffer post-traumatic stress disorder, and Venables in particular told of experiencing nightmares and flashbacks of the murder. In 2001, a 6-month review by the parole board found that both boys were no longer a threat to public safety, and they were released on lifelong licenses at the age of 18, after serving just 8 years. Both were banned from ever returning to Liverpool and given new identities at a reported cost of £1.5 million. James's mother, Denise, believes that they should have remained in jail for life and has tirelessly campaigned against their rights to remain anonymous. In 1999, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that the pair did not receive a fair trial and awarded costs and expenses of £29,000 to John Venables and £15,000 to Robert Thompson. Lawyers for the pair argued that the adult court venue and publicity made it impossible for the schoolboys to be given a fair trial. In recent years, Robert Thompson is believed to have succeeded in making a new life for himself. John Venables began living independently in March of 2002. Sometime thereafter, he began a relationship with a woman who had a 5-year-old child. After a period of apparently reduced supervision, Venables began excessively drinking, taking drugs, and downloading child abuse images, as well as visiting Merseyside, which was a breach of his licence. On 2 occasions, John Venables also revealed his true identity to a friend. In 2010, Venables contacted his probation officer, reporting that he feared his new identity had been compromised at his place of work. When the officer arrived at his flat, Venables was attempting to remove or destroy the hard drive of his computer with a knife and tin opener. The officer's suspicions were aroused, and the computer was taken away for examination, where severe child sexual abuse material was discovered. It was also revealed that he had been posting on online chat rooms using the name Dawny, pretending to be a 35-year-old woman who was boasting about abusing her 8-year-old daughter, in the hopes of obtaining more indecent images of children. He was jailed for 2 years in 2010 after admitting to downloading and distributing child pornography images, but was released in 2013. In February of 2018, the then 35-year-old admitted to further downloading 1,170 indecent images of children, some of them showing serious crimes inflicted on male toddlers, as well as an online paedophile manual that included advice for would-be child molesters, including instructions on child grooming and evading detection. He received a 40-month sentence, which was described by some as a joke. A petition was launched for Venables to be sentenced to life without parole. Despite receiving a new identity yet again on the 23rd of November 2017, it was reported that Venables had again been recalled to prison for possession of more child sexual abuse images. In the months after the trial and following the birth of their second son, the marriage of James's parents, Ralph and Denise, broke down, and they divorced in 1995. A memorial garden in James's memory was created in Sacred Heart Primary School in his hometown of Kirkby, the school he would have attended had he not been murdered. On the 4th of March 2019, James's father Ralph lost a legal challenge to lift the lifelong order protecting John Venables' anonymous state. Judge Andrew McFarlane turned down the request, saying that there was a strong possibility that Venables would be pursued, resulting in grave and possibly fatal consequences. In late June of 2019, it was reported that British officials had considered resettling Venables in Canada, Australia or New Zealand due to the high costs behind protecting his identity. In response to media coverage, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern remarked that due to his criminal history, Venables would need an exemption under New Zealand's Immigration Act of 2009, and that he should not bother applying. Today, James Bulger is remembered by his family and has been imprinted on the hearts of his younger siblings, Leon, Michael and Thomas, who never got to meet him. They have been very vocal about the impact that their older brother's murder had on their lives, with Michael stating, "Going through school, I wasn't allowed on school trips or to go to the shops with my mates. The only place I was allowed was either in the front garden or literally outside the gate with my mates. But I would have to be in view of the window, so if I went out of sight, Mum would be straight out." It is clear that Denise never got over her son's murder, and is something that each family member has had to learn to live with. James was laid to rest at Kirkdale Cemetery. Hundreds of people lined the streets to pay their respects to the sweet little boy. His memorial service featured songs by his favourite singer, Michael Jackson, songs that James used to dance to. This was followed by Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven. Placed beside his tiny coffin, which was carried by his father and uncles, was his teddy, a rabbit that his grandfather had got for him. His toys sat on a special seat made for him by his father.